One way ticket, never boring. Here we go with Jakpa Stories. Welcome to another episode of Jakpa Stories, the podcast where every story inspires another. This is our first virtual session, and today I have with me Tina Talks, who's also known as Deutina Idisi.
Yes.
Tina, I would take that's your government name, right?
Yes.
All right. So I have with me Deutina Idisi. I hope I got that pronunciation correct.
It's Doitina. Well, it's fine.
Deutina.
Yes.
I like that. It's not a very common name.
No, it's not. It's
Yeah.
quite unique. Yes.
And that makes you very, very special.
Indeed.
All right. Um, for the sake of the podcast, I know you're known as Tina Talks, so I'm going to keep it as Tina Talks so I don't butcher that name, but I know for sure it's Deutina.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Tina, welcome to Jakpa Stories.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure having you. I know we started looking to connect a while ago, and today we're finally making it happen. And the
Yeah.
only reason I'm not having you sitting here in our studios is because you are thousands of miles away.
Yes. Might come to Canada, but yeah, maybe another time I would have one in person with you.
Oh, absolutely. I personally look forward to that.
Yeah.
And Tina, for those who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
Okay. So my name is Doitina, as you mentioned, and as you said, most people call me Tina, and I'm the voice behind Tina Talks. And yes, Doitina always comes with a backstory. So I guess it's fitting that I'm on Japa Stories today. So I'll give you the backstory of the name. My dad coined it because at the time he had brought a company from Germany into Nigeria, an oil drilling company called Deutag. And the day was being inaugurated was the day I was born. So he
Oh my
wanted to,
God.
yeah, make it more memorable. So instead of calling me Deutag, of course, which would be weird, he named me Doitina. So my name has German and Latin roots. So I always say,
Interesting.
wow, for giving me a lifelong task of always telling a story every time I introduce myself, because people are always wondering if I'm German. But when I introduce myself, I like to do that across three levels. So I like to introduce myself by purpose, by profession, and then personally. So by purpose, I am a builder, a soul builder and designer, as I like to call myself. I help women build plan Bs when plan A falls apart because I truly believe that beautiful stories can still come from broken lives. And that's the work behind Tina Talks. And professionally, I am a product leader. I have worked in tech for over 20 years. I am also a coach, a speaker, and an author of a book called 5 Good Years. And personally, I am a wife, a stepmom of two amazing teenagers, and I come from a very big family of 13 siblings. So you can only imagine how many nephews and nieces I have. So yes, that's me. That's Tina.
That's a long profile and amazing. And going
Yeah.
from, starting off and then being from a big family and that switch between the corporate side of things and what your personal, or I would say your passion is, helping
Yes.
and supporting other women. And I
Yes.
think you forgot, you probably left out a few things because sometimes when I speak to my guests, everyone is just trying to be humble, but I'm not going to do that to you. I know for sure that you're also an Amazon bestseller and an author and a keynote speaker.
Yes.
And you've been featured as well on usnews.com
Yes.
and also on goodmorningus.com
Yes.
and also on Brains Magazine.
Yes. I'm an
So for
executive.
those,
Yes.
yeah. So for those who don't know, those are other accolades that comes with Tina Talks.
Yes.
And I know also recently, back in 2025, you were recognized as the best Christian women's empowerment coach in the
Yes.
United Kingdom.
Yes.
So those are those are not easy feats, if you ask me, right?
Yeah.
Because not everyone just wakes up and stumbles on being on USA News or on Brains Magazine. So it definitely speaks to the volume of things that you've been able to do
Yeah.
when it comes to your coaching on and building and supporting other women. So hats off to you for that.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think that's why when I looked at your profile, I said, hey, you know what? These are the type of immigrant voices that we want to amplify as much as possible. Because sometimes we underplay the work that we're doing. When I look at the work that other people do,
Yeah.
no disrespect to it, but sometimes if you put apples to apples, you would
Mm.
see that another person is really putting a lot more work,
Yeah.
but the media sort of controls everything.
Mm.
And that's one of our objectives here at Jakpa Stories to look at us as immigrants. We have different stories that make up who we are.
Yes.
That you know, for those of us who are thriving or doing the things that we love to do, there are stories behind each of it.
100%.
Yeah. And for today, we're going to focus on Tina's story,
Yeah.
right? So, um, back to how I always start off the podcast. Tina, have you heard about the word Jakpa
Yes.
before?
Being Nigerian, I have.
Okay. All right. So, what does the word Jakpa mean to you?
So firstly, I would like to say yes. Jakpa, well, for me, when I moved overseas, it was not mainstream at that time. I'm sure the word existed, but it wasn't commonplace at the time. So I think I feel people use the word to express a search for greener pastures, whether that be safety, education, employment. So I can definitely relate. But for me, I did chase those things actually when I jackpot. So that those things apply to me. But also, it also means search for medical solution at the time, because that's something that maybe some of us didn't have, whilst growing up. So yes, that's what jackpot means to me.
I like that. I think it sort of touches on a lot of the key elements that most people associate the word to, because it's moving from one place to another in
Yeah.
search of, I would just say, greener pastures, or in search of the missing component,
Yes.
right? That missing component could be health, it could be finance, it could be a better job, it could be a better lifestyle, it could be anything that you're in search for. Whatever that component is, I know it's different for different people, but I think in your situation, you kind of touch on health,
Yeah.
which appears to be the main reason for you jackpotting back then.
Yes.
All right. So let's touch a little bit of that. How long ago was that?
Um, 20 years this year.
Oh my God.
Yes.
This is
Been,
a special year.
yes. I actually did the calculation. Yeah, not too long ago. Yeah.
Wow. So 20 years.
Yes.
So back then, have you always known that you're gonna immigrate or leave, your country of origin at some point?
Yes, I was that person that, well, growing up I was privileged to have what we call DSTV at the time, but like I was able to watch international like TV shows and music, and I could see how teenagers and kids, they had very different lives. So I always had that yearning. My siblings did have the opportunity to go on vacation, but I didn't at the time I was growing up because I was in boarding school for quite a while. So whenever my siblings would come back, the house would smell very differently. Like the gifts, the chocolates, everything was so different. And I just knew I had to go, I had to leave. So yeah, when the opportunity came, but I would say mine was like a two-step process. It wasn't just straight to London because I live in London now, but I moved to South Africa first for 2 years. I was on the path of studying medicine at the time, but unfortunately,
Okay.
I couldn't stand some of the things that happen within medicine, and I just knew I didn't have the heart for it. So I
Don't tell
pivoted.
me you're scared of blood like me.
Yes, I was, and some other things, but I just wasn't for that part. So I got admission in the UK to study software engineering. So that's when I said, okay, I think London is calling.
What a switch. What a
Yes,
switch from medicine to software engineering.
yes, I know. It was, yeah, very random, but still science inclined, I guess.
Yeah, it's still, I mean, it's part of, the STEM programs and everything. But for someone who, for me as well, growing up, like, I always thought I was going to be a medical doctor. Because
Well,
even growing up, I had, we had this family doctor who was always very fond of me. So
mm,
sometimes it would just come home, tell my mom and my dad, like, oh, he's going to work with me today. So I
oh,
was just used to being around there in his office, in the hospital and everything.
yeah.
And I always just thought, you know what, this is probably a natural path for me.
Hmm.
But, when it was time to get into the university, for those, the folks that know Nigeria, jam has a way of jamming you in
Yeah.
one way or the other, right? And
Yes.
for me, I wasn't just ready to wait.
Hmm.
So as much as I wanted to, study medicine, I
Hmm.
also had this thing at the back of my mind where, hey, I want to be out of the university by a certain age and I want to be able to start pursuing other things.
Oh,
So when I didn't get the cutoff for medicine, I switched over to engineering right away. So I think our story is probably similar in that
100
angle.
100% because I had a similar story. I wrote JAM the first time, my results were missing. And then I wrote to the second time, but in that time I got admission into Immigrant University, which is a private university to study medicine. And I visited the campus and I felt it was high school all over again. And I just said no, because high school was like 3 hours away from home. It was in Abia State, which was, I didn't speak the language, I didn't blend in, and now I have to move
Yep.
to Edo State. I'm like, no, 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 this is not happening. I'm leaving the country. Yeah.
Yeah. So I could absolutely relate with that switch. Just
Hmm.
for me, I found myself doing engineering the next 5 years
Yeah.
and completely different. And funny enough, I fell in love with, the profession and that just made a lot of sense. So how
Yeah.
is software engineering for you, switching from medicine to software engineering? How did that go?
Whew. It was quite a switch because at the time, like I had exposure to like computers and engineering, like in school, but we learned computers without the computer. So it was like, how do I put this in practice? I don't know. I was asking where are the zeros and where are the ones, like I don't see
Mm,
it. And they were like, no, it's in there, and couldn't really get a grasp of it. But I accepted the challenge. I was always studying, good enough at the time. I met a very good mentor once I landed, and he told me, first class is attainable. And at the time, I said, well, the best degree amongst all my siblings has been a 2-1. And he said, you can achieve a first class, ignore the boys, ignore the parties, put your head down, and you can do it. And so, yeah, I just started to read extra hard, and yeah, I did come out with first class degree software engineering, even though
amazing.
yeah, much about it. So yes, it worked out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. First class in software engineering.
Yes.
It's a brains and combined with beauty. And I think whoever gave you that advice, stay away from boys.
Yes. That was
That's
good.
an incredible advice for anyone who is in a university.
Yes, 100%.
Oh no, I like that. And so from there, and after software engineering, looks like you moved into product management, or was it always product management, or you started off doing one of those? developing some software and it got boring at some point and you wanted to be a product owner?
My that is that's a Pandora's box you're opening. But let me tell you, I'll try to make it as succinct as possible.
Yeah,
So yes, I did study software engineering, but what I did, I took a gap year because I didn't want the chicken and egg situation where you graduate and then they say you need experience. But how do you get experience when you just finish uni? So I took a gap year and I got a placement in one of the biggest consultancies, which is Accenture at the time. And having done that, it was an amazing work experience, I must say, but it was one of the hardest things I'd had to do. Passing exams was easy. Being thrown into the work side of things was something else. So I knew I wanted to be in tech. I wanted to build. There was still something calling me to building things, but I didn't know what it was. So I went for a master's in technology entrepreneurship because I wanted to kind of pivot a bit, which I did. And after that, as you know, entrepreneurship really is about building, and technology entrepreneurship is about building product, launching it to market, and all of those things. So I started to, gain a lot of interest in that regard. I did create two products, which now someone else has created and flown with, and I never got off the ground. And it's always heartbreaking to see those things happen.
yeah,
Yes, if you had just persevered a bit, but no, it wasn't any of that. But I took a bit of detours. I went into support engineering, then I went into project management, then I went into events management, then I went into data, business intelligence, business analysis, and somehow all roads led back to products. So yeah, it wasn't
interesting.
straightforward. Yeah.
That's a lot of pivoting.
Yes, six careers I've had. Yeah.
Wow. So I think, just talking about that, it lets me know you have a lot of perspective into so many different things when it comes to the IT side of things and, switching over from there, developing products as well. Um, and sometimes it's interesting where you start off with something and then you think, oh, you know what? This is not for me. I probably don't have the patience for it. And then you find yourself going around in circles and coming back to the
Yeah.
same thing again.
Yeah. Interesting how life works.
Yeah. It sounds like product ownership has been your first love and it's probably, it has circled back to being your current love again at this point.
Yes, it has.
So let's switch over from there. And I know you're doing some really incredible things, empowering women and using some really good strategic mindset to help to transform their personal lives. Tell me a little bit about that. Um, I know that's where Tina Talks really
Yeah.
starts coming in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Tina Talks was birthed from my own personal journey because I obviously from Nigeria, from our African roots, there are certain milestones and markers of success that most women should achieve. And to be honest, I left Nigeria like I jackpot and I was full of hope, full of dreams, full of excitement, and how I would get married, I'll have twins, and I would buy this big house and have a white picket fence, and life is just going to be happily ever after from there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't know I had like an underlying health condition. And, as a young girl growing up, sometimes you don't feel enough for several reasons, but a lot of times women are not aware. So you just chase the next milestone, thinking, yes, it's the next progression in life, right? You're done with uni,
Yeah.
you've come the first class, you have a good job at a top consultancy. What's next, right? To get married.
The word is your oyster at that
Yeah,
point. And
exactly. But then, yeah, I took my oyster back to Nigeria and got married. And, the marriage didn't work out. I tried to have kids. I actually tried to have kids for like 15, almost 20 years,
mm,
and just didn't happen for me. And then I had to relocate back to the UK. And at that time, because of the gap in my CV, I wasn't offered like the opportunities I had before leaving. So in Nigeria, I think they say it's Japa and Jakpa that like you
yeah,
go and come back and
Japa and Jack for that. Yeah.
Indeed. So when I came back, I had to start from the bottom, like literally from the bottom. I had to start washing dishes in Hilton. So it was such a switch, and I came to a point that my mind was I was starting to lose my mind because the marriage had broken down. My motherhood seemed unattainable. The milestones I had used to, define myself were no longer there. My dad was now late. So it was okay, what does womanhood look like now? Do I like life didn't make sense. So I got to the end of myself, and unfortunately I got to the point that I was going to take my life.
Oh
And so
no.
by the mercies of God and all the people, the community I was surrounded by, they pulled me through. And after that experience, I got the prompting to start writing my story. So I started, and that's the book 5 Good Years. And I started to write my story. I didn't know if I was going to publish it or not, but I did. And afterwards, well, even though I was not still like into prophetic or any of these things that people do, but I went to a church in America, and someone said, you're supposed to be a voice for women, and you're supposed to
Yeah.
help. I was like, oh, okay. One of those things you're like, okay, maybe it's random.
Yeah.
And then I went to another event. I think, yeah, it was in London. It was in London. For some reason, the same pastor that said that same word in America was in that church. We didn't know. We just showed up
Interesting.
randomly, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" And then the pastor of this church gave exact same word. So I started to cry, and the pastor that came from America came towards us, and this pastor is like, "Why is she crying?" And he said, "I gave her this word months ago in America. Had no idea I was going to meet her here." And then I was another prayer line another day, and this woman gives another word and says, "I think you need to be a voice." I was like, "Who's gonna listen?" Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, I barely just
It's
wrote a
like
book
that's like the third time.
third time. So I was like, no, I have to do something. So I took the bold step and started, just sharing words of encouragement, trying to help people, like trying to be the voice that I didn't have, because these are not things that, women, especially African women, can boldly come out and
Very
say.
true.
Yeah, so I chose to be that hope, be that voice, and that's how Tina Talks was born. So I coach women, I empower them, and yeah, I give anytime I have the opportunity to speak, I give keynotes, and yeah, do the best I can to contribute.
Well, your story is really intriguing
Yeah.
because for a lot of people, after going through that or after experiencing stuff like that, it's so easy to get, in your shelf and just feel like, you know what? I think, I'm never going to attain some of the things that I've always wanted to attain in life and almost think of yourself as a failure. But,
Yes.
you know, in as much as you were not ready to start being a voice,
Yeah.
um, sort of hearing that from different people
Yeah.
pushed you to start looking into, hey, what exactly am I going to share?
Yes.
And
100%.
and I know it's a bit weird at that stage, right? When you're looking at yourself, you're looking at your story, and you're like, what exactly can I share? Because this is a story of failure and everything, but also
Mm.
forgetting that in that mess, that is where the message is coming from for other people.
100%. And that's why I say broken lives create beautiful stories, because I see women, they don't comment on my post, but they call me in the DMs, and the liberation they're getting, the breakthrough they're getting, because they feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel held. And I'm
Yeah,
glad I can create that safe space for them.
I really love that.
Yeah.
And there was something in your book where, you talked about that crucial phase
Mhm.
that a lot of women get to deal with between 30 and 35, right? Where there's
Yeah.
a lot of pressure,
Very good.
where there's
Yes.
a lot of pressure for them to, to want to change certain things and all that.
Yes.
Tell me about that particular age. I know a lot of women, when they start hitting 30, for sure, there's a lot of pressure. Their
Yes.
biological clock is ticking. And if marriage has not happened, there's pressure either from, especially those from where we come from Africa, from Nigeria, right? From, Cameroon, different, it's a very common culture
Yeah.
across most all the countries out there in Africa. I'm not
Yes.
sure about our friends in South America. I think the folks in North America, if you're from a Christian family, your family probably put that pressure on you as well.
Yes.
Um, but the biological clock is ticking. You're caught between pursuing a career,
Yes.
and you're also caught between when do I start a family? When do I get to have kids? How is
Yes.
that going to impact my career? How do others perceive me as a woman who is, doing well but not married because they think marriage is supposed to be the crown on a woman's head at that stage. Tell
Yeah.
me, tell me about that 30 to 35, which is
Yeah.
really critical for a lot of women.
Yeah, so yeah, my book is called Five Good Years, and I believe God gave me that name because my book had like 100 other names before that. And one day I just got the word Five Good Years. And yes, as you mentioned, it looks at the pivotal years between 30 and 35, where a lot of all these pressures collide. Now, in my case, I got married at 21, 2022, but got divorced at 29. Now, when I was 29, as I said, I came over to the UK for not just for greener pastures, but for health. And at this time, the doctor said, "Oh, there's like at the time I had endometriosis, adenomyosis, fibroids, and resultant anemia." And plus, they said I think it was called FSH, which is like the measure of your follicles, was like which is basically how many eggs you can still produce and have a baby, was very low. So you can imagine, like, you're going through a divorce, you're going through all of these health conditions, and the doctor that had done my operation, like the operation was supposed to be a couple of hours, it was like 5 or 7 hours long, but it was an extended period of time. My family was already scared whether I was even coming out of that. And eventually he was like, "You're married, right?" Because I was still going by MRS. And I said yes. He said, "Well, you have 5 good years to still start a family." And you can only imagine where am I to start? I'm a Christian. Should I go to a sperm bank, or should I freeze my eggs? You've already told me my eggs are low.
Yeah,
What should I do? I remember I told you, coming back, I had to start from scratch. And starting from zero, you're trying to think, should I be pursuing my career? What direction should I go? And it's such a pressure point. And that has been the bane of, the pain for a lot of people's existence, women especially. And that's why I got very passionate about that, because some people may have the advantage of being able to foreplan that phase, but some people, it doesn't, like, they could be in my situation. I could just be, they haven't found the right partner. So what do you
true.
do? Do you just, and then I start to see a lot of women getting into wrong relationships, putting themselves under undue pressure. And when I even look under the hood, to be honest, it would be good if this is what they really want. But no,
Yeah,
when I ask, it's more of, "Oh, but everyone's getting married." But when I go to church, all the aunties are asking me when is it going to happen. And,
yeah,
all of these questions. So, what the work I do is really trying to help them separate the signal from the noise, take alternative paths, because as I always say, broken engagement or singlehood is way better any day than a divorce,
100%.
all of those
Yes.
things. So if there's technology now, you can work, you can freeze your eggs, you can, do so many things. I even heard they can do womb transfers now, which is
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah, so like there's so many other options out there, but I have to deal with every woman on an individual basis. But I think at the core of everything, if I was to summarize, was please do not anchor your identity and your worth and your purpose to markers of success that may not even be yours to begin with.
Very true. I
Yeah.
think I think you address a very real pain
Yeah.
in the society today. And I think a lot of women who are within that age group or
Yeah.
that bracket or even more, because sometimes if it doesn't happen within that 30 to 35,
Yeah.
some people, they just develop a particular mindset and they're like, you know what? I don't give a hoot whether this happens or not. And, life has to go on. But there
Yeah.
are other people who get stuck in it and
Yes.
they're almost like in that cycle where they're going round and round, hoping it's going to happen, not really sure of what their options would look like.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's where a lot of people make so many mistakes, like you said.
Yes.
Either mistakes where they have to settle,
Hmm.
settle to be in relationships that they have no business being in those relationships, but
Yes.
simply because, you know what, I want to have a man to call my own,
Yeah.
or I want to be able to have kids.
Mm.
If this has not happened to me in the past 35 years,
Mm.
then maybe it's not going to happen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I can clearly see a lot of those difficult conversations which so many women are having at that age.
Yeah.
And those are conversations where you just don't have it with anybody.
Yes.
Before you can even open up to talk about things like that, it has to be people in your trusted circle, because you don't want to share certain things and then tomorrow you hear it, from another person's mouth,
Yeah.
because you feel like those are very personal issues.
Struggles. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you're addressing that,
Hmm.
because honestly, when you look at the stats for a lot of people who are like taking their lives and everything, sometimes those are issues that can be addressed, can be solved.
Yes, I think that's the culture of shame, secrecy, and silence that I am trying to, basically combat with my work, because I feel we should live in a world where every version or different versions of our stories can coexist, right? There could be a woman who chooses not to get married, and that's okay. There's a woman that, has babies, that's okay. There's a woman who chooses to adopt, that's okay too. We shouldn't, put everyone in a box, and women are losing their lives, women are losing their minds, losing their peace, their joy in this present moment, which is really valuable in pursuit of something they probably don't really want. I'll just tell you this, and there's been women, several women I've spoken to, and like you said, a lot of times they can't share these things, and they've told
Mhm.
me, Tina, I wish I never had my kids, and I wish I never got married, but it's something I can never say, and I
Yeah,
have to die with this. And I think, wow, so what was the
it's deep.
pursuit about? Yes, like what do you say to someone like that? I actually had a lady that pursued motherhood so much, and she adopted a child, and after like 2 3 years the child was too the bane of her existence. And she said, I want to take the child back. I said, do you think you're in Tesco's? Like, what do you think? Like, you just adopt them and take them back? It doesn't work that way. So, yeah.
Oh, yours. You're not bringing it back.
No, it's for life.
Wow. And
Yeah.
how has it been, when it comes to immigrant women,
Mm.
for example, um, I know the UK, or UK, for example, is also made up of so many folks from different nationalities, very similar to what we have here in Canada, where sometimes you don't even have to travel to different countries, because you could literally meet people from different countries here in Canada and learn about their cultures. So, with a place like UK where people are immigrating on a daily basis from different places, and you see women who are coming from those countries where there's a lot of cultural, they have a strong cultural background, strong cultural expectations and everything. Would you say it's more common with women who are coming from, who are immigrating from those type of countries, or is it more of a common thing, irrespective of color, irrespective of where they're from? It appears to be a common trend. What has it been from your experience?
I think it's common to every nationality. However, it's louder in certain sects of like and communities here. So I have Caucasian friends, I have Asian friends, I have Caribbean friends that still feel this same pressure. But I think from the African background, maybe because of maybe going to church, going to parties, and all of these things where, you're constantly reminded of
Mm,
markers you haven't hit. I think that's why it seems louder within our circles, but definitely not different.
okay. And for all the aunties in church who are always putting
Yes,
pressure on people, please
yes,
be careful.
yes.
Those
Give
those
them
pressures are coming. Sometimes you hear the way it comes out. It's coming from a very honest and a
Yeah.
very, very kind place.
Mhm.
But honestly, for a lady who has hit that mark,
Yeah.
and every time she goes to church, that's what someone is telling her after surveys, that becomes like a very depressing thing when she's in her quiet moment.
Yes.
Because indirectly, it's almost like, yes, I'm looking out for you, but I
Mm.
keep asking you these questions. That's something which no one has control over. So I wish some people would just be a little bit more respectful
Yeah.
and tone it down, because as much as it comes off as very harmless,
Hmm.
on the back end, it's putting a lot of pressure mentally on
Yes.
most women who are going through that.
Yeah, and I think the marriage is one thing, but motherhood is even more painful. So in my time, I
Mm,
had four failed IVFs, and there were times like after the IVFs, basically you feel like you're pregnant. You have all
mm,
the things, and even after that phase, like with all the underlying health conditions I had, my stomach would be swollen, and you see people that would come and rub your tummy. Oh, I know the baby's coming. Oh, I know
mm.
this. Ah, you've added weight. Ah, I think, and you don't know, they don't know it's all the hormones or
Yeah,
like you're taking, and you just feel like you need to explain yourself, and these are personal, painful journeys. And even if it's not fertility, I've seen people who struggle with diabetes that add a lot of weight, or maybe they lose a lot of weight. So I think just let people be and just focus on you and
yeah.
just live and let live, please, auntie.
Honestly, yeah, I think it puts a lot of pressure. It comes in as very harmless, but
Yeah.
I can only imagine, when you go back to your personal space
Yes.
where all of that noise has been filtered, and then you start asking yourself questions. And for most women who don't have the tools at that
Mhm.
point to be able to navigate those difficult challenges and difficult periods,
Yes.
being alone, especially, whether it's out there in UK or in North America, or whether Canada or US,
Yeah.
a lot of people who are in that stage
Mhm.
and are not yet in, maybe relationships that are leading towards, a more committed relationship long term,
Yeah.
most of your nights you're going to spend it alone, and you're going
Yes.
to spend it in your own thoughts.
Yes. And that is a challenge. And for, I don't know if you're aware, but like the statistics around divorced Christian women or men even is on the rise. And it's a different experience when you've just been single versus when you've been married and now you're used to the companionship,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
all of a sudden it's silence. It's something. I was divorced for 10 years before I got remarried, and trust me, it was a desert experience. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Yeah, and I think it's both ways as well, right? I think for a lot of men as well, um, for myself, I've also been through a divorce. I
Okay.
was married for 10 years, and
Wow.
then after the 10 year, that's when, that shit wrecked,
Yeah.
right? And for me, throughout that period, I had always had the identity of being a father, being a provider, being a husband, right? All of that switched into becoming single. Sometimes I would be like, what am I going to do with my time? Where are the kids who are jumping over my head and
Yes.
everything, right?
Yes.
It's a period where there's that shift in your identity, which you could still be processing that, mentally, but your body even doesn't even know what to do. Your body is just like, I've been so used to, a particular schedule, 7 days a week. And then
Yeah.
all of that gets sort of taken. Then you're like, okay, what am I going to do with all of this time?
Exactly. And you hit on a keyword, identity, and that's what a lot of my works borders on, because women don't come to you and say, "Oh, I have an identity issue." But we know something's cracked at
Yeah.
the core, which is why I'm saying marriage, motherhood, and milestones cannot be how you build your worth and your purpose. They can be part of the journey, but I think we need to take it off the pedestal because it's clearly not delivering. I'm not saying people can't be happy in marriages and have, beautiful kids and happy kids. No, for sure. But for others that haven't hit those milestones, then we still need to create a world where they can live and be happy.
100%, 100%. Because I think sometimes we shine the light on certain things.
Yeah.
When you achieve or attain those things, you pause and you ask yourself, is this all there is about
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Like when you want a new phone and then you buy it and then every time like you're on the phone, it's so exciting, and then 3 weeks later you left it in the bathroom. Like you don't even care for the device anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So illusion.
And it's so true, which goes beyond just achieving that milestone or achieving that particular goal, because I think working on the mindset, making sure that, hey, as much as this is good, but sometimes life happens when you lose that thing, or when that relationship ends, or when you don't get that child that you're looking for.
Yeah.
What are you going to do as a person? How does that define who you are, and how can you move forward from there? I think
Yeah.
it's very important, and I think it's something which most people struggle. They don't really know how to deal with grief,
Yeah.
because sometimes, the grief, not just losing someone,
Mm.
but the grief of time is slipping by, the
Yes.
grief of I haven't achieved this thing that I wanted to achieve,
Yes.
and how to make sense out of that grief and spin it around to something positive.
Yeah, I think you've touched on an important point, but there are a few things that have come to mind when you talked about having children as well, and then I'll come to the grief conversation. But in having children, what I even noticed is if you had a girl, it wasn't enough. You have to have a boy to carry
True.
the family name, and then you have a yeah, you have a boy and a girl. They're still like, oh, you need one extra, just in case one happen, or something happens to this one, or this one doesn't turn out right. So it's like,
Honestly,
and it's not even about the child anymore. And when you talk about grief, that is something that I had to learn, that I was going through. Like I shared a video recently that they teach you the 5 stages of grief, and the fifth stage is acceptance. And you think, for me, I got to that stage, I accepted, okay, this is my new reality, but I still didn't feel okay. And that's why I said there should be a sixth phase of grief, which is redemption, which is really God can still use those wounds. He doesn't waste your wounds. He can still create something beautiful, out of it. But the thing is also, a lot of us don't know we're grieving. We just feel, oh, life didn't work out. I feel sad. I feel angry. Some women may even feel they're jealous, they're bitter. I'm like, no, we need to. That's why I created the design framework that I work with, right? The first stage is really discovery, because we need to sit down and really understand what is going on. And I won't take you to the whole model, but is like emotional release, right?
yeah,
We need to let that out. And grief, sometimes I say it's complex when you have to grieve you, because if someone dies, if something goes wrong external to you, it's easy to see it, cry
yeah.
over it. When it's you, like I
How do you
had to
deal with that?
do it, like I'm here, I'm alive. How am I crying for me? But that's part of the safe space I create, so we can really let that go. Because a lot of times, as I say, depression is anger turned inwards, and that's what starts to lead to all of these other issues. And some women go to therapy, and therapy is good. I went to therapy,
Mm,
but after therapy, a therapist would never say, now do this. And that's where I knew there was a gap. And in my time, I got a coach, and she was able to help me, understand what was going on, what values are attached to these things, grief it. I remember this day I was just on my couch. I call it the Sarah's moment. When they told Sarah, like, she was gonna get pregnant. So I cried and I let it out. But then I had to start rebuilding, and that's where the whole design work comes in. How do we create a future, a version of the future that is still as beautiful and meaningful?
yeah, yeah. No, I saw your design framework, and I was like, this is really smart. But it speaks a lot about your personal journey and
Yes.
how that fits into a framework that can be applicable to other women out there, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, so the D is discovery, the
Yes.
E is emotional release,
Yeah.
the S is spiritual alignment,
Why you? Yes.
the I is intentional action,
Yes.
G is grit,
Yes.
and N is new narrative.
Yes.
So when folks go through that entire framework,
Yeah.
um, what has been your experience for women who probably come in very clueless at the
Mhm.
beginning, just really in that messed up phase where they don't know what to do?
Yeah.
And by the time they go through that process, what's usually the story? What kind of, I would say, testimonials have you seen so far with some women who have been dedicated um, to the process? Because
Yeah.
sometimes I also know when not everybody starts something and finishes, right?
Yes.
Because life happens, people are busy.
Hmm.
Sometimes you think you're going to commit to it, but life
Yes.
just happens, and then it completely slips off on your priority list. But for
Yeah.
those who have actually gone through it and committed through it, through that design framework, what has been some of the feedback that you've received from them?
Yeah. I would say the one recurring theme is peace. Because I think when there's all these voices speaking and all of these, that's why I keep saying separating signals from noise, because then we're able to drown the noise of, not saying they're going to disappear, but all those aunties, they're still going to be there. For women that can't have kids, people are still going to have,
Yeah,
babies. You can't stop
true.
that. So it's just,
And they're
first of
always
all,
going to say what they want to
yeah,
say.
they want to say you can't control the external
Yeah,
things.
aunties are always coming from a nice place, but they don't even know that this is the impact of what they're saying.
Yes, yes. So I think first of all is the peace they get at the end of it. Secondly, they have a plan. A plan. I don't want to say like vision board, but they have a vision for their life. They're able to come to the point, to the realization that some of these things were not really theirs to begin with. But yeah, I think I would say the biggest takeaway is them taking the seat, the driver's seat of their lives, and being bold enough to do that. That boldness, that courage, the resilience, because that's why I build grit, because we can have this cocoon where we're, talking, but you can't pay me for eternity, right? And
Yeah,
go out in the world, I mean, the aunties, you need to build that resilience so they're able to have, like, we even create like list of go-to answers for those things that just creates that border. Like it doesn't come as close as it used to and doesn't hit them. And they have like their mantra. I don't know if you can see it behind my wall, but I have my mantra. Like I stick on there. I tell them, put it on your wall. Whenever those thoughts come, look at that, remind
yeah.
yourself, and they're able to, yeah, create a beautiful life. Some of them realize they always wanted to travel. Some of them chase a new career. Different things. People relocate. One just moved to Miami and she just bought a
Interesting.
one way ticket to Miami. I'm like, wow, okay, that
Love
wasn't the
that.
actual families. Yes,
Yeah, no, I think the empowerment that comes with that is having the right tools to face certain things, which most of the times, those things are staring at you in the face. You're dealing with them on a daily basis.
yeah,
Sometimes you don't have the tools or how to address them. And
yes,
especially, I don't know how it is out there in London, but in Canada, the society, everyone is just like very polite and very respectful. But
yeah,
underlining all of that, there's like a real, communication that is happening, which most people are not picking up, right?
yes, yes,
So having the right tools to deal with all of that, I feel like it empowers a lot of women, a lot of, immigrant women to be able to get through those difficult phases.
yes,
And, I think the confidence that comes when you've gone through that, I
yeah,
mean, buy a one-way ticket and,
yes.
just go do what you want to do.
Let me live, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that sparked my curiosity as well was, I was just, I was doing my homework and I saw that, you also have something called the 5G of becoming.
Yes.
Um, which I thought was, a very smart way,
Yes.
especially um, I work in telecom. So whenever I see 5G or 3G or 6G or 7G, it sparks another interesting opening in my brain where I'm like, okay, what sort of models are here? But this is the 5G journey of
Yeah.
becoming, which is sort of a transformative process
Mhm.
for a lot of women.
Yeah.
And you talk about starting from that ground phase to grief, and then from start growing, developing the grit, and eventually glowing.
Yes.
I want you to tell me a little bit about that. How did the 5G of
Oh.
journey of becoming even come about in the first place for you?
Yes, obviously I am in tech and I had my tech hat on and I was like, okay, I want to create something that is both, soul led but tech led somehow or tech
I
influenced.
love it. I love it.
And my book is called 5 Good Years. So I was like, it would be good to have something linked to that. So I just sat down one day. I was like, okay, what phases did I really go through? Like if I was to unpack my journey, and I started to see patterns from when the marriage when like ended and I was on ground zero to how I grieved that, and then I started, to apply for jobs again and learn new skills, and started to write and I started to grow. And I went into the gym, not just physical gym, mental gym. I had a coach. I was paying thousands of pounds every year just to get my mind and my resilience back. And to the point that, to be honest, I look better. I'm turning 40 this year. I look better now than I was in my
Wow.
20s. And yeah, people like, what happened? You're glowing. My mom always asks me, like, what's your skin routine? Like, I was like, you won't be impressed. I promise you. Like, I don't do
Goes
it.
beyond a skin routine.
Yes, like honestly, it's peace of mind. That's the kind of glow up I want my women to have. Like when you're really grounded in who you are, your identity in Christ and in God, and you're really living from this aligned place. There's just a glow that you can't hide. And
Yeah.
yes, that's the 5G journey, and that's how I'm here. What like at this point in life, and yeah, it's just a beautiful space to be in.
It just hits different. So I love what you're able to do with that and how a lot of women are actually leveraging that to transform their lives as well. And happy
Yes.
birthday in advance. You don't look 40. You probably look like you're about getting into that, that phase of 30 to 35 where a lot of
Yeah.
people are getting pressured.
I'll take it. I'll take the compliment for sure.
Yeah, because, I mean, when you think about what happens every day with, people just waking up, there's a routine. You wake up, you show up,
Mm,
you're smiling, you're doing your best to just, keep that face, be that good employee or that good manager or director, who is doing his part or doing her part,
yeah.
supporting the team. You're working, you're probably serving, you're doing other things, within your community and everything. But sometimes underneath all of that, there's this underlying hurt that exists, which
Mm,
most people don't talk about.
yes.
And, whether it's hurt from a heartbreak or hurt from not being able to achieve certain things,
Mm,
the struggle is real. And most people are dealing with that.
yes.
Um, and just getting to know that, these frameworks or these different, things that you've put together will be able to help people to address those. I think it's really, really great. Starting off with women, that's fantastic. Is there any plan to switch over to men at some point?
I have to tell you, like a lot of men watch my content, and interestingly, it's almost a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
And men actually tell me they learn a lot. I have male friends that like Tina, you were speaking to me today. So it's not secluded to women. It's just obviously I can help a woman much more than I can help a man. But I do coach men, interestingly.
Okay.
But obviously there's a depth I can't go to because I'm not a man. But yes,
You
you're
would be
well.
surprised. Yeah, no, I think it's something that is applicable to both women and men, right? The pressure is slightly different for men, obviously, because um, to men as well, 30, 35, you're probably not under a lot of pressure at that point to, find a life partner or get married because most people at that age, that's the building phase for a lot of men where, they've learned a whole lot, made some mistakes between 0 to 30, between 30 to 35, they know this is game time.
Yeah.
I better sit up, I better start building because I don't have a lot of time again. Now,
Yes.
between 30 to 35, a lot of men are building, but between 35 to 40, those questions start coming as well, right? Either your
Yes.
mom is asking, "Hey, when are you going to bring my daughter-in-law?" Or all your friends, you've been to a lot of weddings and
Mhm.
you've been a groomsman for a lot of those different weddings. And
Yes.
everyone is probably just looking at you like, dude, when is it going to be your turn? When are you going to invite us over? Right? So most men are dealing with that as well, but just a slightly different timeline.
Yes, I actually had a conversation with a man early on this year, and he said, I want to speak to you. I know you coach women, but I want to speak to you. I said, okay, I'm all ears. And we spent a good hour speaking. And he said, because I offer like free clarity calls,
Okay.
just so that I can speak to women to see if I can help, because there's some cases that for therapy, there's some cases that is for a coach. So anyway, he comes on my clarity call and he says, I don't want to get married. I'm 36, but everyone's pressuring me. Do you think something is wrong with me? And I said, absolutely not. I said,
Mm.
are you getting married because you want to get married, or do you want to tick a box? Is this a tick box exercise, or it's what's aligned to your spirit, your soul, and where you think you should be right now? He said, no, it's just, all his older brothers are married, and at church people are wondering, you're an eligible bachelor, you could make one of these women
That's the
really.
name.
Yes, why you not doing it? So, nah, he did progress, and he said he was actually happy coming off that call that, yeah, he was doing the right thing. That was true to him.
Yeah. And I think that the truth is it's not for everyone, right? And same thing where, especially out here in North America, I'm sure it's probably the same thing in UK,
Yes.
where there's a lot of couples, they get married, they're life partners, but from the word go, they're like, you know what? We don't want to have kids.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
no one is going to pressure them into that because they probably realize that, you know what, we're not going to be great at this, or this is going to like take away our, the us time where we really spend time and, get to know each other, travel. If you have 4 kids, your travel plan changes,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And one thing I would say is the fact you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
So the fact that, women feel, okay, I have a womb, I must have kids. I was like, do you know how many like eggs you have and how many like sperms that a man produces if he was to continually have kids, like because he has the capacity to, does it mean you should just carry on procreating till infinity, right? There's a point you have control. So as I said, I've seen a lot of women who wish they had taken a different path, and I'm not for or against anyone's path, but let's get grounded, let's get aligned,
Yeah.
because without that you may just regret it at the end of the day.
True. Because, letting that pressure get to you, folks are going to put the pressure, but they're not going to be with you throughout the journey. The journey
Yes.
becomes yours.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say that when you say about the journey, there was a lady I was coaching, and she said, "Tina, all I wanted was just to dress my baby girl up in pink, and I wanted a pink stroller, and I wanted to be in pink as well, and go out shopping." And now she's just, I think they call them the terrible twos. She's
Oh,
two,
yeah.
screaming, she's this, she doesn't even want to get in the pram, and I'm past the face. It's like a new gadget. You just got it, and but you're stuck for life. And yeah, this is
Yeah.
it.
They grow, and they have a mind of their own. And they
Yes,
start growing that cute little human
it's
that
gone.
you were so fascinated about that brought a lot of smiles. The smile phase switches into a learning phase both for you and the child, right? Because the child is going through their own. transformation as well. They're learning new things, they're picking up new things. And then even you as a parent, you're looking at that and you're like, this is not the cute baby that I had. Things are changing. How do I relate with this new human?
Yeah. And saying this, I remember having when I was going through all of this and I decided to question why I wanted kids, and I was asking quite a few people at church like why do they want kids? And I wasn't impressed with the answers. First of all, a lot of people didn't know. Some other people felt it was the right thing to do. I remember one gentleman, he said, so that to carry the family name. So I said, okay, what if she's a girl and she obviously gets married? He didn't have an answer beyond that. And I asked another guy, and he said, oh, it's so that, the child can take care of my father's compound back home. And I
Oh my
said,
God.
you had me as a child. I'm sorry, I would have let you down because I haven't even been to Nigeria in over 6 years. So I wouldn't have been the right, choice of a child to do that. And then the final person said, well, who will take care of you when you're old? I said, you realize my mom had nine of us and then one adopted child, and she lives in Nigeria by herself in a house all by herself. So if that
Interesting.
is your retirement plan and you think you won't be alone, shock, you will be.
Yep.
And kids these days are digital natives. They can be anywhere in the world, and the chances that they'll be by your side when you're old may also be slim. But please just think about it. And these days, kids are not like when we were growing up, where they feel entitled to support their parents when parents are older. My kids are having minds of their own. So if you're having kids for a retirement plan, I think you can get a better retirement plan than that.
Yeah. You might want to think about that again because
Yeah. It's a
it's
thankless,
probably
to be honest, having kids is a thankless task, and hats off to moms that do it. But, I think it's something you do, not expecting anything in return. And if you do,
true.
then it's a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you just hit the nail there on the head. It's being a parent is something which, um, it's almost like you have to love what you're doing. Um, and it's a very selfless act, and you got to do it not expecting anything in return. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents right now are, they get to be parents because they almost, especially, like African parents, because they get to do that because they're thinking, oh, this is going to be my retirement plan. Because
Yeah.
when I'm not able to work, my kids are going to be, working and they're going to be sending me money,
Yeah.
which is sort of the black tax that we get to deal with sometimes,
Mhm.
right? Because it's expected.
Mhm.
I mean, we all love our parents and everything, and we want to take care of them as much as we can.
Mhm.
But switching from that generation to our generation, I think a lot of folks that have spoken with,
Mhm.
people planning their retirement plan, which is really all about them,
Yes.
regardless of whether someone is able to contribute or chip in or not. They're thinking ahead, like, when I'm 60 or 65, where
Mhm.
do I want to be? What kind of things do I want to be doing? I don't want to depend on anybody. So I want to think and structure that right now so
Yes.
that when it gets to that phase, I'm not looking or leaning to anybody to take care of me.
Yes, 100%. And when you were saying this, an important point came to mind, about this having of children and things, which is what I discovered coaching multiple women is at the end of the day, most women just want to nurture.
Yeah,
It's not even about having kids. And I don't know if you watch the show Super Nanny,
I
but
know, not yet.
yeah, it was a very famous like show in the UK where this woman would come into households and teach mothers how to, you know, deal with all the tantrums and sticky situations that children get into. And interestingly, she had an interview recently. This is a woman that has helped, I dare to say, thousands of women, either physically or via her shows. And I was shocked to realize that she doesn't have kids of her own.
Yeah.
And she is called Super Nanny for a reason. Like, I learned so much from her when I was raising my nieces.
Wow.
So sometimes we have to separate, is this really what you want, or it's a craving to nurture. And there's several ways to nurture other than birthing biological children. But you wouldn't know that because you may not be problem aware. You're just headed in this direction and
Yeah.
thinking there's an expectation at the end of it. And then when it doesn't come, you start seeing parents that are heartbroken in their old age. So I think we should do better from our generation going forward.
100%. Yeah. And there's a lot to learn, right? Because even parenting, a lot of parents get into that. Like there's no template. Most
Yeah.
people become parents and they start learning on the job, right?
Yes.
It's just like going to apply for a job. You don't have the credentials.
Mm.
You're not qualified,
At
but
all.
you're given that job and you have to start learning on the job how to become, that person with the right skills,
Yes.
to be able to perform optimally within that position.
Mm.
So that's what a lot of parents are dealing with. I know it's tough, but huge learnings for sure that we all have to deal with.
Yes.
So Tina, I'm going to switch over to something which you usually do in person,
Yes.
here on the podcast, and it's called, our first fast questions section.
Yes.
And and
Should I brace
for
myself?
you have to brace yourself, but not for too much impact though.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna ask you a couple of, quick questions. I want you to give me the first answer that comes to your mind. Okay? You
Yes.
ready?
Yes.
All right. So 9 to 5 for entrepreneurship.
9 to 5.
9 to 5. That's the tech way of speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that running a business comes with its own challenges,
A
and
lot. People don't
it's
speak
not
about
easy.
their jobs. Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of buzz out there where you just hear people talking about their success. Oh, I hit, 6 figures or 7 figures or 8 figures, right? But I
Mm.
feel like there's not a lot of justice to that story.
Yes.
Like the sleepless nights, the long nights, the meetings that failed, um, a lot of the things that went into attaining that number, which
Mm.
people don't talk about. And
Yeah.
then for another person who's probably doing, exceptionally well within the 9 to 5, and they look at that and like,
Mm.
oh, this is some solid ambition. I'm going to drop my 9 to 5 and go do this, only to figure out that it wasn't easy,
Yeah.
you know. So, next question:
Mm.
window seat or aisle?
Window.
Window?
Yes.
You like the views?
Always. I like, when I go on trips, I always make a video after my trips, and I like to get the view of the city. Like New York was so beautiful. I think Morocco as well. No, Morocco was arid land. There was somewhere else I went to. Vegas. It was Vegas, and it
Okay.
was for that view. So I need the
Yeah.
best to see.
Yeah, I'm actually supposed to be in Vegas next month. So,
Oh,
like, sometimes I go there in a year, like 2 or 3 times, and I never get tired of it.
yeah, Vegas is fun.
Even though the lifestyle is so fake, like, everything there's just,
Sure.
I try to get it out of my head the moment I get on the next airplane back.
Mhm.
All right. And the last question: Airbnb or hotel?
Hotel.
Hotel.
Yes.
Okay. Looks like you like being pampered.
Yes, I do. I'm in my glow era, so I
Your
need.
glow area.
Yes.
Oh, no, we definitely need that. That bougie lifestyle is very important at this phase. So
Yes.
people can keep mistaking you for, a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this has been amazing, Tina. I think you're doing an incredible job out there supporting a lot of women, making sure that they get support during that difficult or clueless phase, which most people are dealing with, because that is a phase where people don't talk too much about what's going on.
Mm.
But most of the time, people who are close to them, you get to see the results. And sometimes it might be too late before anybody even knows that this is what this person was dealing with. So hats off to you for um, taking all of your personal learnings and painstakingly putting that in a book, putting that in a framework, which a lot of people can relate with, because anybody that gets those tools will be able to use that and get out to become more confident and know exactly what they should be doing with themselves and sort of have a path forward and, to be able to go through all of that and become the best versions of themselves. And here in the podcast, that's what we aim to also support a lot of people with, because it's not just immigrating. It's not just going through the Jakpa phase.
Yes.
That's phase one. The excitement of that phase drops, a couple of months later on when you realize it's just not just about the beautiful houses, good roads, good cars, and everything. How
Yeah.
do I thrive within this new home? And that's why we connect with people like you who are able to share the stories so that other people can learn from it and really see when I hit this roadblock, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that's the end. I can still thrive. I can still navigate that and become the best version of myself. So thank you for what you're doing. Really, really appreciate it. And right now, I want you to speak to someone out there. It doesn't have to be a woman. It could be males as well. Who are going through that difficult phase. I want you to really speak to them directly, um, from your experience, chatting with other people, just a word of hope for them that, you know, there's an opportunity to connect with you. It's not the end of the world, whatever it is they're dealing with, because mental health is real. It's a solid thing. There's a lot of stigma that goes along with it, but
Mhm.
connecting with the right people always helps to
Yes.
move people through that rough patch or rough phase that they're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I would say is there is, I know this may sound cliche, but genuinely there is light at the end of the tunnel. I would like to say that there is help, and do not feel ashamed to ask for help. There's nothing new under the sun, I like to say. But sometimes when we're going through these things, we feel, isolated. We feel our story is irredeemable. But for someone who, I came from a very, well to do background, had everything, great, had all the dreams and thought I did life right. But unfortunately, life went sideways. And having to, be humble, start from the ground up, build again, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, and in my career, like it almost seems like with like almost impossible. Sometimes my friends say, Tina, the kind of growth you've had is not
Right.
what regular people experience, especially considering that I had to rebuild from the ground up again.
Yeah.
I've also had, miraculous things happen. One was like buying a house with, £500 in my account. You know,
Wow.
yes, and having multiple properties for someone that was washing dishes. It's there is light, but there's a
Yeah.
system to get there. And I have a system that can support you, that can help you, not from theory, but from lived experience, from going through the trenches and being able to build a beautiful life that I'm happy to live every single day. It may not be perfect, but it's very beautiful.
I love that. No, thank you so much. And I think for most folks out there, we're going to put your Instagram details, but if you can just share that here and any other contact details for people who are looking forward to connecting with you. I think there's a lot of value in what you do and what you provide, especially to our immigrant community out there, irrespective of where folks are coming from. These things that we've talked about, it's a very common, you know, the very common layer that most women deal with, most men deal with
Yeah.
across different phases. So the folks who want to connect with you directly, where can they meet you?
Yes, so I am primarily on Instagram. It's tinatalks.uk. And my website is also tinatalks.uk. On my Instagram, you can go through the link tree bio, my link tree link on my bio, and you would see some resources. Like you mentioned, the 5G journey. I have a 5G playlist where, I put together songs for every phase of your becoming. So at least that can get you started. If you need support, DM me, design, or you can book a free clarity call. It's on me. nothing to charge you. I just genuinely want to give you that support and that safe space. So the link is in my bio as well. You can book a free clarity call and let's have a talk.
I love that. And I'm going to check out that playlist. And, whenever you're here in Canada, if I happen to be in London, we'll definitely need to have another episode in person. But this was really fantastic. Um, so, what's next for you? I see that we have another book coming up called Daughter by Design.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if it's already out there, but it seems like it's going to be an expansion from what you currently have for 5 good years.
Yes.
And um, tell us a little bit about that without going too much into it, because I need folks to also be on the lookout when that drops.
Yes. So yes, you're right. Daughter by Design is like an expansion from 5 Good Years, because 5 Good Years was, even though it was written as fiction, the main character is Owadi, but that was me. I was still hiding at the time. And that was my whole story from breakdown. If there's quite a few juicy things in there. But since then, obviously, I have grown, I have evolved, I have coached more women, I have created a design framework, and this is about like a book that I hope would not just inspire, but would transform a generation, shift a culture, change a mindset, help women really raise their children as daughters first, and daughters by design first, before the marriage, before the motherhood, before the milestones, and creating that healthy sense of identity in the women and in the girls that we're raising to become women for the next generation.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Tina. And thank you for making out time to be here on Jakpa Stories.
Yes.
Um, we really, this was a great chat, even better than I imagined it would go. And I'm really looking forward to when we'll have an in-person session, because I know for a lot of folks out there, this is something very relatable. It's something they can connect with, a real problems that people are dealing with, and just to know that there's a solution. You don't have to sit there on your own. You don't have to, think you have to figure it out on your own.
Yes.
There's a coach who's just a call away, who's probably just a DM away.
Yes.
So, folks, I would say leverage this by all means. Connect with Tina, and I'm sure I'll be keeping an eye out for more victories ahead, and looking forward to connecting again in person.
Thank you so much, and yeah, for the opportunity to share. And yes, this conversation was very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Until next time,
Yes.
for folks out there, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the other interesting episodes that we're going to be dropping. And once again, thank you for spending time with us today. And we hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
Yes. Thank you.